You're lying in your bedroom. It's quiet, it's warm, you're completely relaxed. The safest place in your home is supposed to be in your room, in your bed, isn't it? Your walls, your little private space. But now imagine that inside one of those walls, just a few centimeters from where you lay your head every night, there is a tiny metal capsule. It is smaller than your finger. You can see it, you can hear it, and you can even smell it. But every second, it releases invisible beams of gamma radiation, strong enough to slowly damage your organs, your bone marrow, your DNA, and the lives of the people you love. And that exact nightmare happened in a small apartment in Kramatorsk, Ukraine, year 1980 until 1989. And for almost 10 years, no one knew what happened. And today I want to tell you a story about orphan radioactive sources, what they are, why they are so dangerous, and why cases like Kramatorsk, Georgia, and Chikande orphan source incident keep happening. Because radiation disasters aren't always explosions. Sometimes they're just forgotten. So, what is an orphan source? An orphan source is simply this: a radioactive device that has become lost, abandoned, stolen, or forgotten. Usually, the source come from factory, hospitals, mining machine, density gauge, well logging tools, or even a military equipment. So they are supposed to be handled with strict regulation, registered, tracked, and safely restored. But when a company closes down, or a machine is scrapped, or records disappear, this radioactive capsule becomes orphan. Without owners, without control, without protection. And that is where the dangers begin. And why are they so dangerous? These sources are small, portable, and harmless looking. A tiny cylinder, a size of battery, or a tiny disc size of a coin. But inside, there can be cesium-137, cobalt-60, or strontium-90, materials that emit powerful radiation that penetrates skin, concretes, and even human tissue. So unlike a nuclear reactor, orphan sources don't cause explosion. They cause slow, quiet tragedy. A family sleeps beside the contaminated walls for years. A worker handles scrap metal that is hot without knowing. A villager finds a strange metal object and brings it home. Children play with something glowing or warm, not knowing it's deadly. The danger is silent, and that's what makes it terrifying. And it is so many cases in former Soviet country. Many of the world war's orphan source incidents happen in ex-Soviet region, and this is not a coincidence. During a Soviet era, radioactive sources were used everywhere in industry, military bases, construction, mining, and remote energy generators. After the USSR collapsed, thousands of facilities shut down. So workers left, records were lost, sources were left behind, unguarded and accounted for. People living in poverty started to salvaging scrap metal from abandoned industrial buildings, but they had no idea they were touching radioactive emission. And When regulation breaks down, the danger escapes. So the case 1, the Kramatorsk incident, the bedroom Ted killed. Let me take you back to Kramatorsk in early 1980s. So, it started somewhere in a quarry. Workers lost a tiny sealed source of cesium-137. They didn't find it again. Years later, gravel from that same quarry was used to make a concrete panels for an apartment building. One of those panels contained the capsule trapped inside the wall. And then, a family moved into that apartment. They put child beds against the wall, and over the next 9 years, children developed sudden leukemia, the mother fell sick without explanation, and 4 people died. 17 others were harmed, and the doctors were confused. No one connected the patterns. Until finally, a radiation safety officer measured the wall and realized that gamma radiation was leaking at level hundreds of times higher than normal. Imagine being that parent, realizing that the wall next to your child's head has been killing them slowly for years. This wasn't a nuclear plant accident. This wasn't an explosion. This was a lost capsule, an orphan source forgotten in a quarry, and it changed lives forever. And the second case, Georgia, the man who tried to stay warm. In Georgia, another tragedy unfolded after the Soviet collapse. Deep in the forest, 2 men found strange metal cylinders that were warm to touch. It was winter. It was freezing, so they used the cylinder as a heaters. But these weren't heaters. They were RTG cores. RTG stands for radioactive generator made of strontium-90, once used to power remote Soviet equipment. So the shielding had been removed, the raw radioactive core was exposed. The men suffered devastating radioactive burns. Their skin peeled, their bone marrow failed, they nearly died, all because they tried to warm themselves during a cold night. This was not a stupidity. This was lack of information, lack of security, lack of regulation, and another orphan source. And the third case, Chikande, a modern reminder. This is not a problem in the past. It is in 2025. Indonesia faces its own orphan source crisis. So cesium-137 was found inside the scrap metal at Chikande Industrial Estate. It had been melted in a smelter, the waste or slag became contaminated, and some of it had been used by local residents to fill land and reinforce the ground. So multiple areas tested positive for the higher radiation. Authorities traced the contamination, evacuated materials, and began a criminal investigation. The government is even suspended scrap metal imports temporarily. This incident proves something important. Orphan radioactive sources are not a Soviet problem. They are a global problem, and they're even happening today. So, what radiation actually does to health effects? Radiation from orphan source can be deadly because it penetrates deeply to your body. It breaks the DNA, it damages bone marrow, it causes burn, organ failure, and cancer. In short term exposure, it can cause nausea, vomiting, severe skin burns, hair loss, immune system collapse, and long term exposure, like in Kramatorsk's accident, can cause leukemia, tumors, and chronic illnesses. So you don't need a nuclear bomb to cause radiation sickness. Just a forgotten capsule in a wall, or a scrap metal piece left at a factory, or a melted cesium pellet mixed into a steel. So why this keeps happening? Because the system is broken. Radioactive sources are easy to lose and hard to track. Companies shut down, scrapyards don't have detector, poor communities salvage industrial waste, regulation is weak, education is lacking, and radioactive materials are literally too small to recognize. Sometimes, all it takes is a moment of carelessness. One worker throwing away a machine without checking, one gauge failing off a truck, one facility closing without proper disposal, and a new Kramatorsk began. So, what can we do? We need a world where every radioactive source is tracked from birth to disposal. Scrapyards and ports have radiation detector. Workers are trained to recognize dangerous items. Government provides safe disposal programs, and community know how to report suspicious device. Regulators have funding, technology, and authority because safety is not luck. Safety is a system. So the lesson is, the scariest part of orphan source is not the radiation. It's the invisibility, it's the silence, it's the fact that ordinary people, family, workers, children can be harmed without ever knowing why. A source the size of a battery can poison a house. A warm metal cylinder can destroy a man's body. A single contaminated scrap piece can endanger an entire community. But we are not helpless. Awareness is power. Regulation saves life. Education prevents tragedy. And by understanding this silent danger, by treating orphan souls with the urgency they deserve, we can make sure that no family ever sleeps beside an invisible killer again. Until next time.